So thank you very much. This time I would like to entertain you about airflow calorimetry, you know. There is some interest in this method since a few weeks among our community with questions, you know, how does it work? Is it really giving valid measurements and so forth? So I had to make up my mind about that, and to do that I started to scratch, and I wanted to share with you my review about this technology and to discuss the rapid overview of the main parameters that are involved in this system. This is the theoretical principle. It's quite simple. You put your LANR device, your reactor, in a box. You have an insulated box around. You flow air inside, air outside. You measure the temperature difference. You know the flow rate, you know the CP, and you get the heating power. Nice. But in fact, the insulation is never perfect, and it has an influence, you know, on the whole system. So this now energy is given by this temperature difference, and now these losses. So what are the main parameters? Obviously, the mass flow rate, the air heat capacity, which depends on temperature, humidity a little bit. The temperatures, of course, obviously, inlet and outlet, and the losses. And the losses, which we are going to analyze together between convections, radiation. And needless to say, because all the parameters cannot be precisely determined, it is advisable to apply calibration. But okay. Mass flow rate. M is the product of this pipe section area, the mean velocity of this air going through, and the air density. Now you have to determine this mean velocity. If you have a long pipe, you have such, theoretically speaking, such velocity profile. And as Judd mentioned this morning, they got this kind of, let's say, comment several times. And this is the reason why they measured the velocity at different points across a radius or a diameter, just to check that this is not a profile like that, but in a turbulent regime, you have almost a flat profile. In the industry, when we want to have such a measurements, in most cases, we use a tranquilization, equalization screen like that, you know, that makes the velocity profile almost flat just behind this screen. We are going to see an example. Mass airflow sensors are already existing in the industry. This is something known. This one in particular is used in car engines when you have an electronic injection control engine. You need to know how much air you have in it to inject the right amount of fuel at each stroke. So you measure, in your car maybe you have this kind of device, mass flow sensor, not the screen here, and what Judd told us about was a pitot-type anemometer, and also the whole type was just a diaphragm sitting in the middle of the pipe. What is interesting is that this hot wire sensor measures indeed physically, at least on the theoretical principle, this product. Lambda, this is the air conductivity, rho the air density, v this velocity. So you measure at once all this thing together. With a pitot tube, you measure rho v square. So you don't measure immediately this flow rate, which should be rho v, but rho v square. And this is the same thing here. So this is again this hot wire sensor. You note the screen here. And the product is almost constant when you look at the different conditions in terms of pressure, temperature, even humidity, water content. This product, well, does not vary very much. This is the reason why hot wire sensors are very much used in the industry. But because most customers ask to measure this velocity, the suppliers calibrate these devices to give you the velocity. So in doing so, they assume that the air density, the air humidity, water content, and so forth are standard. And you are happy with that. But indeed, if you change the inlet temperature, the inlet pressure, and so forth, you get a number, you get the velocity, but you don't get any more what is directly measured. And this is a shame, because indeed the inlet signal of this system is this product. And all these suppliers make up a big effort to give you just this one, while we need, indeed, the raw figure. Anyway, temperature inlet and outlet. If the flow is turbulent, you know, the mixing of the gas uniformizes the temperature. If necessary, you can apply static mixer, but okay. The blower introduces some energy in this gas, so you should locate the blower downstream of the temperature outlet measurements or upstream of the temperature inlet measuring point, you know. You should avoid cooling down between this air and the environment, insulate the pipes, and more importantly, maybe, these temperature sensors must be protected against the infrared radiation of this reactor, especially if you have a hot reactor, because especially if the outlet sensor, if it is in direct view of the reactor, you know, it gets the sun from the reactor and gives just the wrong number in terms of temperature. So you should keep your sensor in the shadow of this reactor. If we give rapid analysis of the losses, you know, in terms of conduction, radiation, and convection between this reactor and the environment, we have this air box in between. You have conductions via the supports. I don't want to insist too much on that. But also, conduction is the only heat transfer system through the airbox itself. So there is no radiation in the airbox, no convection, just conduction. And airflow is exactly by convection between this reactor and the air inside the box is exactly what you want to measure. Maybe immediately in terms of radiation, this device radiates on the airbox. This is the reason why you should have a reflective surface inside the airbox, and the radiation is bumping in and out several times. In terms of radiation as well, it radiates to the environment, but if you have this box in the sun, you know, you heat up your airbox while you should not. It losses by conduction, okay. By convection, as I said, the convection is the only useful heat transfer system we want to use. And indeed, the convection exchanges the heat between the solid surfaces and the gas via surfaces. And the surfaces include, of course, the reactor surface itself, but also the inner surface of the airbox. This is important. The atmospheric pressure is variable, so plus minus 3% easily, depending on the weather, so at least you should know that, especially if you measure the velocity instead of this product, rho v. Convection, there was also a debate concerning the air stratification inside this airbox. So let's discuss this a little bit. In this picture, I place the outlet pipe at the top of the box, okay? And if you try to find out, to imagine at least the relationship between these different temperatures in the air, you get, well, you should agree probably that it goes in this order. The T3 is close to the inlet temperature, T outlet temperature is close to T2, and everything is lower than the device temperature. Same thing if you have the inlet at the top. It's slightly different, but you still have T2 just lower than TD. Now, In other words, there is no stratification in this case. Now, if you have the outlet at the bottom of the airbox, this is different, you know, because the inlet temperature T1 is already at the top. And indeed, if you try to find out the hierarchy between these different spots, you come to the conclusion that there are hot air pockets below the ceiling of this airbox, you know. It means higher than this outlet temperature. T2 is higher than T outlet temperature. So it means that you are going to increase the losses by thermal conduction through this insulating wall. So you are going to get some stratification and increase heat losses. And to avoid this problem is simple. You should locate the air outlet at the top. Radiation. Radiation increases rapidly with the device surface temperature. And as I said, you have multiple reflections inside the box. So you have a reflective surface. Everybody is doing that with an aluminum sheet inside the box. So that's nice. Sunlight or nearby heating appliance may heat up your thing when it should not. But important to keep in mind is that air is transparent to infrared. So the radiation increases the box inner surface temperature. And this is like that. You have this hot reactor here, and it heats up this inner box wall. You can control that if you put additional screens between this reactor and the airbox. So if this wall is not in direct view of the reactor, but if it sees intermediate screens, fins, whatever, you know, you get more exchanges by convection and less by radiation. To explain a little bit more this fact, I made the following calculations, you know, with an airbox, perfect insulation, so no losses by conduction through the insulation material. The surface area of this reactor is 0.1 square meter, and I make the calculation for two different boxes, one with the inner wall area 0.5 square meter, another one with 1 square meter, and the same convection coefficient for everything to keep things simple. And what do we see? We see that following the surface temperature of the reactor, you get different wall temperatures. But you know, if you have a reactor at 600 degrees, for example, in the small box you go up to 300 degrees C. Yeah? In a large box, only 150 or 160. So it makes a difference. Even worse, in most cases, it was discussed several times today, there is a relationship between the reactor surface and the reactor power. So as a result, if you put this reactor in different boxes, you have different relationships between the reactor surface and the reactor temperature, hence the reactor power. It means the airbox configuration has a direct influence on the reactor power. This is important. So you should keep that in mind, you know. If you have a reactor at 700 degrees C, following the configuration, you can have 4 kilowatts or 5 kilowatts, 4.5 kilowatts or 5 kilowatts. So you should keep that in mind. The airbox in configuration influences the relationship between the surface temperature and the power. In terms of accuracy, you understand that many parameters are involved. Some of them cannot be quantified accurately or easily. You know, even the mean air velocity is something you measure, but well, you are never so sure. All pieces must be firmly mounted and to avoid any movement. You know, if you change the position of the reactor, you change the place of the sensor, and you change the configuration. So everything should be firmly secured in position, you know. The laboratory temperature and air circulation should be controlled. If you open the windows, the curtains, the sun irradiation, and so forth, it changes things. So calibration is key, definitely. In terms of calibration, you can calibrate two different things. You can calibrate the air, heat, power, exporting power with, I mean this product, the mass flow rate multiplied by, air conductivity, air density, and heat capacity. So to measure that, you put a grid, for example, heated grid in the vein of your pipe, and you measure the temperature difference upstream and downstream, and you get a calibration of this air exporting capacity. Or you can calibrate the whole system, you know, with a heater located preferably with the same geometry as the device. And the best is to use the device on the test to produce the calibration heat. And you can even make frequent calibration during a test, you know, an additional power in this reactor to get a pulse to see how it responds to recalibrate at times the response of the system. In that case, you get some fair measurement. In conclusions, this is a method relatively easy to set up. You know, you don't have to bother about water leakages in your system. This is suitable for any device size. Indeed, I use in the industry this kind of method in blast furnaces, in the steel industry, electric arc furnaces, to make the heat balance, you know, of this system. So this is something common. Unfortunately, this is a slow response. You can only judge a system at equilibrium. At equilibrium may take several hours to stabilize. And accurate measurements are possible provided frequent calibration is performed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation, but I have small remarks and questions for you. It's well known that aerodynamic resistivity of this channel is connected with the power input, and its need to control of the gas flow, aeroflow, mass aeroflow control. Once more. It's well known that there is a problem with connected with the aerodynamic resistivity of this channel calorimeter. And so it needs very careful to measure gas flow, and it's there is only expensive automatic devices to control of exactly its main problem to control of these parameters, initial parameters. It's very important because of many problems connected with more power, more resistivity. It's very difficult to stabilize this problem. This is the first problem. And the second problem is not problem, but remarks connected with you inform us about absolute calibration of this calorimeter, but it's possible relative, comparative. For example, the example electrical heater, and after this you have use unknown parameters, for example, linear parameters. So calibration is not absolute, but relative, one each other. It's more simple